Hey everybody, it's Dr. Hyman. How you doing? Have you join another Instagram Live with me? This is kind of fun. I get to talk to cool people about interesting things, and you get to listen in. Isn't this the best? I love it. We're going to have a great conversation today about something that I like, which, sometimes isn't so good for you, but honey. But this particular honey is actually good for you. And even though I'm super not a fan of sugar, I do think that we can use sugar as a recreational drug. And honey is one of the best recreational drugs on the planet for a lot of reasons we're going to talk about today. And there's a particular type of honey we're going to talk about, which is Manuka honey. This is a very different kind of honey. It comes from New Zealand. It's made from the Manuka flowers, which are really unique. And the bees there are pretty awesome. And I really, really love it. In fact, when I went to New Zealand, I've been there many times, I actually get the honey and bring it home with me. So now you can get it here, which is pretty awesome. It's from a company called Kombita. And we're going to be talking to Alan Bugan, who's one of the key people in that company that actually helped co-found it at the age of 24. He was the managing director until 98, and he's the chairman of the board. But he's such a cool guy because he's really studied sustainability, bees, and farming for a long time. So I'm going to grab him and see if we can get him on. Give me a second here. Okay, let's see if we can send them an invite, and let's see if they join us. So it's pretty awesome to be able to get this stuff out in the United States now. We're going to talk about why honey is pretty awesome for a lot of reasons. And this is very, very healing honey. And it's been used in a lot of different approaches in medicine, for example, for allergies. People are using bees and stuff for Lyme disease. It's kind of interesting. But I think that we're really in a situation where we're going to be able to sort of get all these people want to join. Oh, people are calling. Okay, hold on. This technology isn't always the best, but we can get them in again. Okay, I requested again, and I don't see them anywhere. Hopefully they're going to join.
I'm a function medicine crew. All right, Karen, you Latina, that's cute. There we are. Oh, yes, success. Fantastic. Holy cow. We tried this last week. We didn't get very far, but now we're here, and you're in New Zealand. It's nighttime. It's here in Massachusetts. It's daytime. And hello, everybody from everywhere, from Latvia and Turkey and who knows where else, and New Zealand. So welcome, Alan. How you doing?
Very well, Mark. Actually, it's 8:15 in the morning here. I've just had my Manuka honey with my muesli for breakfast, of course. So just letting you know that.
Wait, it's 8:15 in the morning?
It's 8:15 in the morning. Yes.
Oh wow. Okay, I thought it was nighttime there. The lights are on. Well, I've got mine too, which is pretty awesome here. So,
Terrific.
Welcome. So, let's get
Thank
right
you.
about it. You kind of are the Manuka honey expert of the world. So tell us what got you into Manuka honey, and tell us about its healing properties and how that motivated you to get interested in this particular type of honey.
Okay, Mark. Well, my story goes back to the 70s. Strangely enough, I was living in Southern California in 1971 for a year, and I came back to New Zealand, and I was kind of, by that time, kind of a converted health food guy, really. And I wanted to pursue a career in that industry somewhere. I ended up living on an island off the coast of New Zealand, an island called Great Barrier Island, and I learned to keep bees. And I had hives, and I was producing the only honey that we could produce on that island, which was called Manuka honey. The reason for that is it was the predominant plant on that island, or tree, if you like. And it was a very dark honey, very rich, strong flavored honey, but it was not really in demand. People didn't like the strong taste. They didn't like the kind of minerally taste, and dark honeys weren't really in fashion back then. And it was only when a friend of mine had yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it was only when a good friend of mine had a problem where one of her horses bolted through a barbed wire fence. You know what a barbed wire fence is. It's a pretty ruthless kind of a setup where this wire has these barbs sticking out of it, and it severely lacerated the horse's front legs. And my friend was desperate that the wounds were heavily infected, and she got the notion to use a mixture of honey and in a rudimentary cream, and she bandaged the legs of this horse up with this product. and miraculously it cleaned the wounds up and healed the wounds in a most remarkable way. And
Wow.
it really impacted me. I thought this honey has got a whole lot more going for it than what people realize. So, and then in 1974, I co-founded a business called Convita with my partner, who was 40 years older than me. He was a health food guy as well, and also a very, very good beekeeper. He had been keeping bees all his life. So it was the old guy and the young, enthusiastic guy, both kind of health food, nutritional guys wanting to make a difference in the world, getting together. And that was the beginning of Convita.
Amazing. So tell us about the scientific papers, because there's thousands of scientific papers in the scientific literature on the benefits of Manuka honey, which is sort of surprising because we don't think about sugar being a healing thing, but this may be an exception. And there's compounds that are bioactive that are only found in this particular type of honey, Manuka honey. So why is it the most powerful honey, and what are the benefits and healing properties?
Yes, correct. Well, I guess really you could see Manuka honey as in a way a perfect health food, if you like, a perfect natural food, and provided that it's treated right by humans in terms of processing and that sort of thing, then you really have something that is unadulterated from nature. And it's part of a beautiful story as well. But really, it's because it's of its very complex biological makeup. Manuka honey contains more than 2,000 active compounds.
2,000?
2,000, yes. I mean, it just, this world keeps, as the science keeps developing, this just keeps expanding.
Okay, I'm gonna get some. I'm gonna get some.
30 of these compounds are absolutely unique to Manuka honey.
Wow.
And we're finding that these compounds work synergistically to bring about a whole range of very powerful health benefits. So there are many papers published now, but the first paper was published back in the early 90s by Dr. Peter Molland, who discovered this unique antibacterial property, which we can talk about more in detail as we go on this morning. So that's where it started.
So you've got the antibacterial components. What other things are there? They're immune modulators for allergies?
Yes, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, immune modulation properties. So these things are all the activities that are actually being discovered on from the very original work, which was only around this unique antibacterial property that was found in no other honey. Now, people will say, well, we know honey is antibacterial because that's been known for thousands of years. We know that within Chinese culture that they used honey topically, and in many cultures, even back in Egyptian culture, they used honey topically. It was a great dressing for infected wounds, etc. So that's really undisputed. But now we're going into the nutritional side more and finding that there's other things that it's very, very useful for as well. So we're finding now, even though most of the use has been initially, and most of the research was around topical application, treating diabetic ulcers, infected diabetic ulcers in the lower leg. They're a real something that is very hard to heal. You probably know that, and Manuka honey is very, very effective in promoting healing. Also eczema and dermatitis, those kind of skin complaints. But we're also getting some really interesting feedback now around immune support, gut, and metabolic health. So, and that's where that's where the research is starting to focus down now quite substantially.
So what are they? So there's 2,000 compounds. What are some of those compounds that are impacting the gut and the immune system? I would be really interested in hearing about that.
Well, I'm not overly familiar with all of the compounds, but when we move into the test regime, we find that there's a range of tests that we do on the honeys to work out purity and also potency. And some of those things are leptospirem, which reflects the purity of the product. MGO, which is the non-peroxide antimicrobial levels, DHA, which is a precursor of MGO. So these are compounds that are actually unique to Manuka honey that are helping to create this synergistic effect.
That's really extraordinary when you think about it. I think honey is just more for fun, but you're talking about honey for healing, which is quite different. What about, just your local honey? Why not just have your local honey that you get around where you live? And why should we bother with Manuka honey? I mean, it's all the way from New Zealand. It's kind of far. Like, why should we care?
Well, yeah, well, that's a really, really great question. I guess it's a seed to plate story in a sense, if you think about it. And the uniqueness begins with the source. So this honey is this nectar is exuded from the plant. It's part of the leptospermum, greater leptospermum family. This is a unique cultivar in New Zealand called Leptospermum scoparium, which is indigenous to New Zealand. It's found you've been to New Zealand, it's found in some of the wild areas in the bush, and that's where we collect it from. It's a truly monofloral honey. So we've worked out how to collect honey within a very short time frame. That means that the honey is 99% pure monofloral source. By that I mean it's not mixed with other nectar types that are from plants that are flowering at the same time. And of course, most honeys around the world, including in New Zealand, we get a sort of a multiflora honey. So people can call out a particular source of honey, but in fact, it might only be 70% from that particular source. So what we're dealing with here is really a monofloral honey that has a chemical footprint that we test for, endlessly test for actually, to make sure that we have that purity and also that potency. So it's kind of a different approach, Mark, that we take. We are harvesting a medicinal product, actually, and we are verifying that through a series of laboratory tests. We do more than 34 tests on our honey to determine purity and potency. So it is really a medical product as such that we are taking to consumers.
Amazing. And when you see on these bottles, you see UMF, for example, this is UMF 10. And you have this really premium monofloral Manuka honey in this certified UMF standard, which is sort of the gold for independent assurance of the origin, the quality, the potency of the Manuka honey. So what's the difference between UMF levels and what does it mean? Because some might say 50, some say 10. It's like a lot of confusing stuff.
Yeah, we're worried that there's some confusion, particularly in the US market, around the or these quality standards of Manuka honey, and it's something that's troubled us for a long time. Let me go back a few years. In 1992, Dr. Peter Molan published his first paper on the non-peroxide activity of this particular Manuka honey, and it was a unique activity not found in any other honeys in the world. So honey is antibacterial. We know that because of the sugars and the acidity and also the peroxide levels. That's understood. But this was a unique activity, and he called this NPA activity, non-peroxide activity. He came up with the standard that he wanted to create called UMF, which actually stands for the unique Manuka factor. So the UMF stands for unique Manuka factor, and his idea was it was a bit like an SPF on a sunscreen, right? SPF 10, SPF 15, and so on, denoting the strength of the product. So UMF is the unique Manuka factor, and the rating system talks about the purity and the potency. So that should be quite simple for customers and understand. Unfortunately, there are other standards in the market that are standards that are created and driven by particular companies that are actually not UMF. They are other things, that K factor and other things that really are not. They're not real as such in terms of where the industry in New Zealand is going. So I want to just put that on the table. But the UMF mark is a sign of quality and potency. It is a separate organization that monitors its members. So you become a member and
Yeah.
you have to get a number, and then you comply with their standard, and they police that standard around the world. So it's really the only mark that makes sense. Now, the reason for that is there are 3 signature compounds that are tested that relate to
Yeah.
purity and potency. Leptospermum, reflecting the purity of the product, MgO, which is the non-peroxide antimicrobial levels, and DHA, which is the precursor to MgO. And the numbers 10, 15, 20 represent the magnitude of this non-peroxide activity
Yeah.
based on the phenol scale. So it's brought back to a typical antibacterial strength scale. So the higher the UMF rating, the higher the purity and higher the potency of the. It's as simple as that. So, of course, the price goes up as the purity and potency becomes more intense. Mostly potency, because the purity is pretty much undisputed. It's right up there in terms of a monofloral honey. But it's potency, the potency of the antibacterial action and
So
the
the 50
intensity
for
of those.
for example, the 50 is different than the 10 and the 15. The higher the number, the better it is. Is that the idea?
Correct, yes. And we find that the consumers around the world, people that are dealing with gut health problems often take the higher potency product because it's thought to have some great effect around Helicobacter pylori, that particular bacteria, and other digestive problems. So it's kind of horses for courses. But when it comes to topical application, and Dr. Molin's original work, he predicated his work on the UMF 10 product. So he always said that if you were using UMF 10 product on topical wounds, you're going to get the wounds healed, undisputably.
So the antibacterial is a huge thing.
Medical dressings in your country that are used in post-cancerous wounds, they're used in diabetic ulcer healing, and so on and so forth.
No, that's right. That's right. You know, I do remember and working in the hospitals and actually having honey dressings. Is that the Manuka honey?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I mean, we started that business. It's Manuka Honey. And you'll notice that there will be a UMF mark on those dressings.
Wow, that's really, really exciting. I think because a lot of people are commenting on honey and diabetes, and what if you have diabetes? Can you have honey? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, we don't see any problem. We are finding that we're getting more regulation of blood sugar and modulation. It seems that actually it can be having a positive effect. Not dealing with, sucrose as such.
It seems like if you have honey, it's going to cause your blood sugar to spike, right? No?
Yeah. But we're finding that it would actually can have the effect of actually lowering the blood sugar. But this is all early
Honey,
work at the
really?
moment with it. So yeah, so because you've got completely you've got a balance of sugars and other things. You've got oligosaccharides, you've got prebiotics, all sorts of things going on here. So it's not a simple story. It's you comparing one with the other is not really quite right.
Interesting. So regular honey would be very different than Manuka honey on your blood sugar?
Regular honey, well, I can say that the work that we're doing with Manuka honey is we're finding that there are definitely some benefits with regards to blood sugar modulation.
That's incredible. And the other thing is quite different is the way you grow the Manuka or Manuka, however you say it. And I've been very focused on regenerative agriculture as a solution for creating better food, creating better environment for the animals, creating regenerative communities, because farmers are so stressed by the current farming system. And regenerative agriculture also helps with reversing climate change, increasing biodiversity, and so on. So how is Comvita supporting these values? And, this is the honey. It's really, really yummy. Honestly, it's kind of dangerous.
Okay, Mark. So firstly, it's pronounced Manuka with the emphasis on the A. So Manuka. This is a Maori. Yeah, this is a Maori word that comes from the indigenous people of New Zealand, the Maori people. Just for your information, it's not an Australian word. We've had some interesting discussions with our Australian cousins who like to use the word Manuka on their version of Manuka honey, which is actually, it used to be called jellybush, but these days they're trying to call it Manuka honey. But it's actually, it's from New Zealand. So let's be very clear on that. Look, from the start of our journey with Comvita, we wanted to have a organization that was able to make a difference. We wanted to help people. We wanted to reset the dial around some of the issues around agriculture and regenerative agriculture and so on and so forth. So we saw ourselves being able to play in the space of being able to create medically driven products from plantations of Manuka that we plant ourselves. So these days we have upwards, we're getting close to 10 million trees in the ground, Manuka trees in the ground in various parts of New Zealand. And one that is good for our environment in many, many ways. Manuka being a plant that actually, a small tree that actually acts as a nurse tree in the forest. So it really cares for the forest and allows the larger trees to come through. And in parts of New Zealand, of course, we have the same issue as most parts of the world, where our big species of trees disappeared in a relatively short time, in a kind of a world timber rush. So we're taking a long-term view of that. We're seeing 300, 400, 500 years where what we're doing now is going to have an effect for future generations. We've always been involved in things like wetland restorations. We spend a lot of time and effort in helping restore wetlands in our region. And I guess as a company, we are constantly looking for opportunities to actually express ourselves around this whole regenerative agricultural idea. But we do a bunch of other things as well. We had some big bushfires in Australia a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of animals damaged during that time. And we were able to supply, through a partner organization called Saving the Wild, we were able to supply our honey-based creams for applying on the animals' wounds, which we thought was a rather cool concept to come through with. And something else that we're doing at the moment that is really exciting me is it's actually a project in Kenya. There's a group of elephants called the Tusker elephants that are actually highly endangered. And interestingly enough, those elephants need they need their corridors where they can travel between their habitat without interfering with humans. And the only way they've been found to do that is if you use bees. You can actually place beehives along these corridors. And elephants don't like bees because bees, even though they're very small, they can sting elephants and give them a lot of trouble. So really? the minute elephants sense bees around, they head in the other direction. So we're starting a lovely project with the Maasai people in Kenya there, where we've created now several hundred beehives that they're using to actually define these corridors for these Tusker elephants to give the elephants somewhere to go, and B, give the people some assurance that they're not going to get their gardens and their villages munted as the animals come through. I'm just giving you a few examples of the range of things that Comvita does, but we're highly engaged around regenerative agriculture and teaching around that. We take a program into schools called Birds, Bees, Kids and Trees, and we have done for